You know, sometimes I don't want to try hard. Sometimes I just want to be like head empty, no thoughts, super amped elemental discharge. I mean, there's such simple pleasure behind watching the flashy particles and looking at the pretty colors while you deal tons of damage. And sometimes that's all that I want to do. I just want to turn off my brain and go brrrr. When I started making content for Monster Hunter Wilds, I made a video saying that SAED was going to be viable for Charge Blade. Now, obviously, this comes with the caveat that it cannot just be any SAED, it has to be elemental SAED, because the way that I see it, elemental Charge Blade has always been like the matchup dependent kind of thing, while impact is, you know, a generalist. You can just hit everybody with the same amount of damage, more or less. So I've been grinding quite a lot, actually, because in every Monster Hunter that I played, I always get to the point where I want to have every elemental Charge Blade, because I know that every game has these like super high elemental hit zone value monsters that you can completely just bully with a good Charge Blade. And so that's what I did, and I'm very close to having almost every element with perfect reinforcements. I think you can only get 4 elements. 4 element reinforcements. You cannot really go higher than that, apparently. At least from what I know. Maybe you can let me know in the comments, maybe. But the thing is, I took my Charge Blades and I went out there and I tested it on all the monsters. And instead of like trying to kind of like make a deconstruction of the amount of damage that it does to every monster, what I did was a tier list based on how good it feels to play elemental SAED against different monsters. And this is the final result. So the categories of this tier list are rather quite literal. I think that Gravious is, you know, already universally known for being this monster, you know, that gets demolished by elemental Charge Blade. But there's other monsters that take quite a lot of damage as well. It's not only the damage that they take, but also just in general how good it feels, you know? There are matchups, as you can imagine, that are not very favorable for not only for Charge Blade, but for the SAED playstyle specifically. But in summary, the end result was that I was able to come up with a build that allowed me to spam AED 1 and 2 and SAED as much as I wanted, and completely capitalize on the elemental file damage to go through the hunts. And to be fair, it's working pretty well, man. Like, I even tried this on the 9-5 monsters that we just got, and if I'm playing well, I've been able to get a few 6-minute capture runs on a couple of the 9-5s. Which to me is actually very efficient. On average, you know, like my goal is always to hunt a monster under the 10-minute mark, you know? Which again, like I have tried speedrunning, but I'm not a speedrunner in general. And this build in particular was not really made to speedrun. It was just made to feel good when hunting. So that's kind of how this tier list works. It only describes what matchups feel good when playing elemental Charge Blade, especially when you're trying to spam as much SAED as you want. I do want to go into some details about this. There are a couple of interactions that I find actually quite interesting. You know, the monsters that have really high elemental hit zone values are obviously almost all on S tier, but I didn't expect Lagiacrus to have like good elemental hit zones actually. When it comes to damage, my criteria is that you have to be doing like above 250 damage per file with elemental Charge Blade. Because if you're not, like, what's the difference between like that commitment and just playing impact, right? Because at least like in my character, like when I play impact Charge Blade, on average my impact files are doing 160 damage per file. Here you have an example of the impact file damage that you can do with artillery and loaded shells, which is decent. So the criteria of this tier list is more or less based on how much damage I can do to the monster, and as I said, how good does it feel to play against that specific monster with the elemental Charge Blades. Because I'll tell you right now, Gravious can be kinda miserable, but I was surprised to see that he can also take some really hefty damage from elemental files. I've seen ticks of like ranging from 280 to 350. Which is pretty good, to be honest. Let me go over some specific cases now, because I do think that there are some monsters that present you with really cool interactions when you're playing elemental Charge Blade. So first of all, we have monsters like Nu Udra and Uthduna, and you can argue that they both have what it's called altered states. So Nu Udra, we all know that it engulfs itself in flames, and when it's on fire like that, I think that he actually takes more elemental damage from water attacks. So the same thing happens more or less with Uthduna, because Uthduna will cover itself with this mantle, right? And the mantle can take like 450 damage per file from the elemental discharges. And so I've been having this experience where sometimes I will fight a monster by using SAED when they are on their altered states, and when you shut it down, I only use AED 1 and 2 to target more specific parts of the monster that can have better hit zone values. Because it does happen that when they get out of their altered state, they stop taking as much damage from elemental files. But you can still get really, really good damage if you target those particularly vulnerable spots, like the head. In the case of Uthduna, it can be the 4 legs. I actually saw a speedrunner that did exactly that. They would play with SAD when Uthduna had the mantle, and then they would switch to AED 1 and 2, followed by Morph Slash into Shield Thrust, into AED 1 and 2, and so on and so forth. Which, to be fair, made me really happy to see that the weapon is being used in such creative ways that are incorporating like more of the moveset, depending on what's currently happening in the fight. I think that's super cool, and I feel like Wilds throws you a lot of bones to be able to play like that. Not only in that sense, but also, well, I'm gonna show you the build later. There's a lot of the monsters that are like high on the tier list. They also have a lot of attacks that can activate Convert Element, so they play into the set by giving you elemental damage as well. On the second row of the tier list, you have the monsters that have like one specific part of the body that actually gets demolished by the elemental files. Like Mizutsune has around its chest a very high elemental hit zone value, so I've seen sometimes some SADs that hit for around 450 on Mizutsune. But then obviously that matchup is kinda iffy. You have to play a little bit defensive, you have to play a little bit of catch. Mizutsune in general moves very fast, so because of the amount of commitment that it takes you to SAD, it doesn't feel very good always, but you can deal a lot of damage to Mizutsune. Gravious obviously can be a little bit miserable because the motherfucker, like, he has full blown out ADHD, so he never stops moving. It's very difficult to get an SAD off, but you can hurt him really bad with elemental charge blades. And then everything below that tier, from Barahara downwards, it's kind of miserable to use elemental charge blade against those matchups. Mostly because, it's either the fact that the amount of damage that you're doing is not satisfying enough, or maybe just the matchup when it comes to like the moveset of the monster is not very comfortable for the playstyle. For example, let me give you an example here. Yankutku can take around 450 ice damage on the neck, and if you look at the monster, you'll soon realize that the neck is such a small part of the monster that even getting one file to hit the neck is an ordeal. And so it's not a very fun thing to do against Yankutku, even though you can still demolish it by just spamming SAD. Raidao is kind of the same. I'm not sure, but I think that the crystallized parts of Raidao, when he's crystallized, he takes more ice damage to those parts. So I will sometimes find myself targeting the wings, but when I cannot reach them, I'm kind of forced to play like full AED 1 and 2, because otherwise the file explosions don't actually deal as much damage. Gormagala. Jesus, man. This is the only monster, the only 9-5, that actually takes me like longer than 10 minutes to kill it with this build. Because the motherfucker just doesn't stop moving. His attacks have such little recovery, and he has so much HP. I'm actually kind of annoyed of Gormagala in his current state. I avoid it like the plague. I don't like fighting him because it just feels like a drag. I could do anything else and farm more efficiently than fighting Gormagala. So anyway, he has very good hit zones on the head. I can see sometimes like file explosions that go from like 280 to 350, which is very good. But then, you hit the legs or the wing arms, and you will see things around 250, and then it goes down all the way even to like 80. So the hit zones are just miserable. It's just, man, I'm not... Again, I said this, I think I've said this in another video, but Gormagala is such a joy to fight in GU, for example, or even in Rise. At the beginning I kinda hated him, but then I understood like what was his gimmick, and it's also a pretty cool fight. But in Wilds, Gormagala is so miserable to fight right now. I don't like his if he had less HP, I would fight him a lot more. Because I don't think it's like a problem regarding his moveset. It's just like, why does he have so much HP, man? I don't get it. It's just... And on top of that, they gave him like really, really miserable hit zones. So I don't know. Just miserable overall. And well, at the bottom there, you have the monsters that are just not cooperating with your playstyle. To the point that, for example, Jin Dahad, like his head is always too high to hit him with the fire explosions. Every other part of the monster doesn't really take as much damage from SAD. Hirabami, the same thing. I mean, you can practically destroy Hirabami in a couple of downs after you flash him. But just in general, the monster is always like trying to fly. You cannot really like engage with it very comfortably most of the time. Now that I'm giving it a bit more thought, it's probably not as difficult to engage Hirabami with SAD, but it's a monster that doesn't cooperate with you. And Arkveld straight up is some bullshit where like his chains stop taking elemental damage when he gets deactivated, when you knock it out of his elemental state. I mean, his altered state, right? So Arkveld is just miserable. It is universally known that Arkveld is a physical damage matchup, right? Because of that very reason, the chains don't take any amount of elemental damage. So just very miserable overall. So especially the monsters that are at the top of the tier list, they offer such an interesting experience in Charge Blade, especially with Elemental Charge Blade, because you have the possibility to sometimes go for full SAD spam, and then in the middle of the hunt, change your playstyle to focus more on AED 1 and 2 to target more specific monster parts, so that you can really get the most out of the damage from the elemental files. And I really like that. That is really fucking fun to do, because it keeps you on your toes. It gives you a little bit of variety in your gameplay. Also, playing with this set means that I can also use something else that is not Corrupted Mantle. God damn, man. I fucking hate that mantle. I despise the fact that it's like so strong. But anyway, like you can equip Rocksteady and you can just like spam SAD for a couple of minutes. Actually, like for around a minute. It doesn't last very long. But even that is just enough to really allow you to go to town with the monster, especially in the ones that take like a lot of damage, like Suwu, for example, Fulgur Anjanath, maybe even Lalavarina, you know. Those monsters get demolished by SAD spam. And obviously, we have the goat of goats, Gravious, that it's full blown out obliteration with him. Like, just look at this! $1,000 damage on the file explosion? Holy shit! All right, listen. If you're not feeling too good, if you're a little bit sad here and there, and you need to give like a jump start to your brain, just grab a water charge blade and go hit Gravious. My charge blade doesn't even have all the elemental reinforcements that it could have. This is the one charge blade that I'm missing, and I'm dealing this amount of damage to Gravious. It's insane, dude. So anyway, there's the tier list. I think that if you want to play SAD, especially Elemental SAD, obviously you have to go through the hustle that is getting the full, like the best reinforcements on the Elemental Charge Blades. Obviously that is like the worst part. Now, the way that I structured my set was because of this talisman right here. Looks pretty good, right? So let's talk a little bit about the skills that I think are important for the Elemental SAD Charge Blades. Obviously, 2-piece Gormagala and Coalescence is going to be the combination that is going to get you to the Elemental Cap, right? In a fully upgraded Artian weapon, this is my Elemental Cap. The more elemental damage you have as a baseline, the higher you can get with the Elemental Cap. So obviously crazy numbers here. But I figured that, eventually Coalescence fades away mid-hunt. So I thought, okay, I want to keep my elemental damage as high as possible for as long as possible throughout the hunt. So I invested on other skills like 2-piece Odogaron for the burst bonus, 5 skill points on burst, and also I'm using the Soshia gloves to get a couple of points in elemental conversion. Or was it absorption? I don't remember. You'll see it on the video. But anyway, the thing is that with this, I'm able to have relatively high elemental damage throughout the hunt, even when coalescence is not active. Because again, I made this set just thinking that I wanted to have elemental damage. I'm not really paying a lot of attention to the physical part of the weapon, which, by the way, is not a good idea. If you're optimizing for damage, you should probably build into more crit and into more raw, because that's the meta right now. But as I said in my video like all those months ago, I really think that SAED, especially elemental SAED, is a viable playstyle in Wilds. And I've been testing it, I've been playing with it, and it is incredibly effective to hunt. I do think that a big reason of why people kind of dismissed the ability to use SAED as a playstyle in Wilds is because everybody had made up their minds during the beta because of the results of people speedrunning with the weapon. And then, you know, sadly, when it comes to speedrunning, Savage Axe is just superior. There's really no competition unless you're fighting Gravious, right? For obvious reasons. But the thing is that it's not only the fact that Savage Axe can deal more damage, it's more about like the damage profiles of these weapons. And to clarify on what I mean by that, for example, the damage profile of Sword and Shield is a weapon that has low commitment and fast attacks that allow you to go in and out of danger when you're fighting the monsters, right? So anything that you do with Sword and Shield, you can kind of cancel the animations so that you can roll away or maybe block or basically react to what the monster is going to do next. Savage Axe leans into that direction where you are able to swing the axe and do a couple of attacks, and then you're able to roll. So you can attack, roll, attack, roll. You can keep a lot more pressure, and you will have an average higher DPS when you're playing Savage Axe than if you're playing Elemental SAD or AD 1 and 2 spam, right? That said, my goal with this set is just like to relax. As I said at the beginning, I just want to turn off my brain and like look at the pretty colors, and if I find a good opening, go ballistic with the big damage numbers that SAD can provide. And in that regard, SAD is more of a reactive, counter-focused playstyle, whereas Savage Axe has the ability to have initiative. You can be much more proactive with your attacks compared to SAD because you're not waiting for the monster to do something. You're attacking as the monster is also attacking. But again, like, I think that's a cool thing. It's cool that these are different playstyles that you can have. And when I play SAD, I do it mostly to like just relax. Like, I'm just sitting there waiting for the monster to do something that gives me a big opening, a perfect block, and then I answer with an SAD. Or another thing that is also very fun to do, for example, is I do AED1 and I start fishing for like flinches. So if the monster flinches with the AED1, I can then follow up with SAD, which by the way now has a buff that allows you to do even more damage if you do SAD after AED1. This same strategy has a lot of synergy with like Tempered Wounds, for example. If you pop a Tempered Wound and the monster falls over, you have basically a free SAD right there. And because you're doing like decent damage with the elemental file ticks, you kind of have an easy time popping wounds or even opening them. So that's another thing that's pretty cool about playing like this. So again, the set is optimized so that I can have the least amount of friction to do SADs. It's not optimized to do the most damage. I wouldn't call this like a meta set, but it's a set that will allow you to spam SAD rather easily without having to worry that the monster is roaring and that it will interrupt your animation, without having to worry about the coalescence uptime. You can just hit the monster and see the file ticks go brrrr, right? That's my goal with this set. Let's talk about Rapid Morph for a moment. If you ask me, Rapid Morph is not really worth it right now. It would be much better if you could have like the elemental attack with loaded shells and focus and then razor sharp, because sharpness plays a big role into the elemental damage modifier of your weapon. So it is on your best interests to keep the white sharpness as much as you can. Right now there's just one thing that I've seen that Rapid Morph allows you to do, and that is to punish Uthduna between flops with AED1. You can perfect guard into AED1 and just in the nick of time dodge out of the second belly flop. But that's it, you know, and I guess I would have to experiment more to see if I can find more interactions like that. But right now, I'm using Rapid Morph just because it's like an OCD thing where I want to have all the charge blade skills, but Razor Sharp would be a lot better in this set. So if you want to make it, I highly suggest you to get Razor Sharp instead of Rapid Morph. If you can, of course. But I will go back to the point that I made at the beginning of the video. Elemental SAED Charge Blade is very viable and very, very fun. Obviously, it cannot really compete in the speedrunner universe. There's just so many skills that play in favor of physical damage in this game that just right now, there's no way that like SAED can compete in the speedrunning world. But if you get out of that, you have so many matchups where you can have a lot of good fun by playing this weapon like this. And obviously, if you play in multiplayer, that's where you can really like spam the shit out of this skill. I mean, this move. So yeah, I just wanted to make this video because I do think that after the beta, like nobody really tried to kind of like give more commentary on how good it is to play SAED, especially with Element. Not only because of like the moveset that you're using, but you get actual results, you get good damage from this, you know? And you get to enjoy like all the different aspects of the weapon. You use your shield for perfect guards. You know, sometimes it's a good idea to get your condensed elemental sword power up. And I think that's what makes this playstyle so fun to use, you know? Not only the damage, it's also like all the interactions that you can have now with the weapon. Keep in mind that if you ask me, this tier list that I have here about the monsters would be the same even before the buffs. Things that I would like to see for Chargeblade in the future. Some way to shortcut into condensed slash so that you can charge your sword with like a guard point, or maybe even like make it so that you can do a focus strike, and if you press another button or like button combination, you can, instead of doing savage axe, you can immediately charge your elemental sword if your shield is already charged. Because I do feel that using the damage of the sword, of the elemental sword, when you are playing elemental Chargeblade is actually quite nice. And especially if you're doing like cycles of AD 1 and 2 into Morph Slash, into Shield Thrust, and so on, you do start to charge your files a lot faster than when you can load them. And it's not nice to have attacks that bounce off the monster. Another thing that I would like to see is like, Capcom, can you, like, please already make Rapid Morph affect the full animation of SAED? Like, don't make it do more damage. Only just let us have a faster animation overall. Because right now, the only thing that it does is that it makes the part of the animation where the sword goes into the shield a bit faster, but the rest of SAED does not get affected by this. And I don't understand why they insist on, like, blue-balling us like this. I don't understand it, man. The 9-5 monsters are moving faster and faster, and we're still dealing with this bullshit, man. What's the point? It's the same thing that happened with, for example, the Lagiacrus Chargeblade. Incredible weapon, incredible skill for thunder damage, and guess what? Impact file. Alright, sure. I don't get it, man. Capcom really is afraid of success. What's even more weird is that they gave Chargeblade the overloaded files, and they made loaded shells charge overloaded files when you load them in red, which is something that I predicted all the way back in the beta, by the way. But yeah, like that was a really good decision for the weapon. Extremely good decision. But then when it comes to Rapid Morph, they are just too afraid, man. I don't get it. I don't know. It is what it is. And in any case, if they do add like a really big change like that, it might happen for the expansion. I don't think that we can make those big adjustments like that right now. Especially because the weapon is fine as it is. It's in a very good spot right now, so we don't really need anything else right now. So anyway, I just wanted to make this video to spread some Chargeblade love, show a little bit of gameplay so that you guys can see some numbers. I'm pretty happy with this. I wanted to see if more people are enjoying it, and just recommend you guys to try Elemental SAED Chargeblade, because it's pretty fun, dude. Like, it's just, as I said, no thoughts, head empty. That's it. That's all there is to it. I don't want to do anything else. I don't want to think. Anyway, you know, I can sometimes be very try-hard for the video games. I usually like to learn the mechanics and to explore the gameplay to a deep level. But the reason why I also do that is so that then I can just find a way to play completely brain dead. So, you know, I had my little speedrunner arc with the speedrunner documentary where I was trying really hard to get a good run on Raidao, but now that we have a new like reward system to farm from, I just want to like turn off my brain and slap the monsters till like they're dead. So that's why I made these sets. It's because like playing SAED is not very difficult. You know, in general, it's very safe. You get to block, like stand there, you block a lot, and then you counterattack, and that's it. I do think that this last update, and I know that, you know, some people will not really want to believe this, but I do think that this might be the turning point for the game. I do believe that. And I think it's about time that, you know, we can start giving the game a chance to start shining a bit more, because everything has been very critical. And to be fair, I still have a lot of criticism to give to the game. I'm thinking of making a video review about Wilds at some point, and I'm not going to be so nice, to be honest. But right now, that's not the moment to do that. I want to get people more hyped about the game. I want people to be more positive about Wilds. And I would really like to see people getting more hyped about the Omega crossover. Like, if Behemoth is anything to go by, this shit will be amazing. Like, I'm really excited to see what they're cooking up there on Capcom with the crossover. So, and keep an eye out on my channel, because I'm gonna be doing another episode of The Curious Hunter. And it's gonna be with a very special guest. So, let's see if you guys can guess on the comments, who am I going to invite? I'm actually not sure if you're gonna have like a guess of like who it's gonna be. But anyway, I want to take the time to say thank you to all the people that left a comment on the speedrunning documentary video, because even though the video didn't quite blow up, I think that video has the most positive and heartfelt reception that I've had in any video that I've made. And for that, I really thank you. I know that you guys don't get to see this in general, but it means a lot to me. So I was super happy to see the reception of that video. Really, really thankful for that. I do hope that you guys are having fun, that you're getting some good talismans. Please do any of the things shown in these stickers if you like this video. I'm gonna be paying attention to the comments in case you want me to answer some questions about the set or about the weapon in general. I'm gonna keep working on more content. There's still a lot of videos that I want to make. So take care, have a good one. As always, my name is Sun. Until next time.